Emergency Management Organization, Robert Tordiff, Assistant Deputy Minister, Executive and Indigenous Affairs, Kimberly Riles, CEO for Northwest Territories Health and Social Services Authority, Claudia Kraft, Territorial Medical Director for Northwest Territories Health and Social Services Authority, Mandy Bolstad, Assistant Deputy Minister for the Department of Justice, Jeffrey Edison, Acting Assistant Deputy Minister for the Department of Infrastructure, Corporal Matt Halstead, RCMP, Corey Strang, CEO and President of NTPC, Imran Khan, CFO of Northwest Health. And all those names, once again, are pasted in that chat. And with that, I will turn it over to Minister Thompson for opening remarks.
Sorry about that. I'm having some technical difficulties. Good afternoon, and thank you for all being here today. Yesterday, the City of Yellowknife and Yellowknife Dene First Nations announced a tentative date of Wednesday, September 6th, for residents to begin returning to Dene, Delo, and Yellowknife. The NWT intends to change the evacuation order for Ingram Trail to an evacuation alert at the same time as Dene, Delo, and Yellowknife order is changed to an alert. Sorry about that. This is excellent news, and the NWT is looking forward to welcoming residents back home. Our team across government are working hard to prepare for your return. There is a lot of work that must be done to ensure that a basic level of service and support is available for you when you get home. As we work to prepare for an organized and safe return home, we ask residents to stay where they are until the evacuation order is lifted on Wednesday, September 6th at noon. Please do not drive back towards the NWT Alberta border until Wednesday, September 6th. There are no supports available in northern Alberta for evacuees considering moving north to wait for the order to be lifted. Alberta won't be accepting new or transferred registrations of evacuees in northern communities. On your drive home, you will be responsible for your own food, place to stay, and other things. For those who need to take a re-entry flight home, we have a registration process available online and by phone for people to use. Residents who need a flight can register by visiting the NWT public safety websites, where they will find a link to the online registration form. If the web is hard for you, you can call 1-888-383-4830 between 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Again, the number you can call is 1-888-383-4830 between 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. daily to register. To register yourself and your family. We have officials here this afternoon to answer more questions about how this process will work. While this is a good news for Yellowknifers and residents of Dene and Delo, we recognize the residents of the communities of Hay River, Fort Smith, Kikisa, Kaladichi First Nation Enterprise remains away from home. Since the evacuation orders were in place, the MACA regional offices have been in ongoing contact with most community government leadership and administration. We continue to have cooperative planning discussions about a variety of matters, including reentry and recovery. As part of this process, MACA has advised them that once the fire conditions permit, we will remove evacuation order at the request of the community government to provide for reentry and in some communities start the cleanup and recovery process. Our teams are still working very hard to fight the fire outside your communities, and our priority is to get you home as soon as it's safe. We ask residents from those South Slave communities to please stay where you are rather than traveling to Yellowknife. There will be limited services available in the city and some time as all residents return and settle in. There will be there will not be supports like evacuation centers and accommodations available in Yellowknife for evacuees from other NWT communities. I know that the process of going home will be challenging and stressful for some residents. We will do our best to answer your questions and provide as much information and support as we can throughout this process. Thank you for your patience over the past several weeks. Please continue to be patient and kind with one another. Please seek your information from credible sources like the GNWT Public Safety page. This is where all of the most current information is shared. I want to again thank the Government of Alberta, Manitoba, British Columbia, and the communities within these provinces for opening their doors to thousands of NWT residents during this evacuation. We will be forever grateful for your support during this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Thompson. And now I'll turn it over to Minister Green to make remarks.
Thank you, Aggie. Good afternoon, everyone. As we plan our return to Yellowknife, Delo, and Dene, I want to ask for something important. That's to be kind to each other. These past weeks have been really tough. The one thing we all share is the feeling of anxiety of being forced out of our homes and the stress and worry that comes from that. That includes people who provide essential services who've been working longer hours than usual for weeks on end. So please, let's be understanding and kind. Now I want to turn to what you can expect from the health and social services system over the next month. When the evacuation order ends, Stanton Territorial Hospital will be able to provide basic life-sustaining services, including emergency care, some surgical capacity, inpatient beds, and support services. Primary care, public health, home care, and day sheltering services will also be available, also with limited capacity. Our dedicated child and family services teams will support families, while our mental health and wellness teams are working to expand services for those affected by the trauma of this event. Please be patient because of our limited capacity. We estimate it'll take us a month to reach full capacity, and that includes repatriating all the inpatients who were transferred to Alberta and British Columbia. Our ability to provide services depends on having our dedicated staff back on the ground. We'll bring services online as quickly as possible, and timely updates will continue to be provided to the public. Our services depend on people to operate them, and these dedicated individuals will be returning at different times and with varying levels of readiness due to their own experience as evacuees. The 1-month time frame involves not only reinstating services, but also normalizing them. That means returning to wait times and appointment available similar to what we experienced before the emergency. For those advised not to return immediately, such as people needing dialysis, chemotherapy, IV therapy, or those in an advanced stage of pregnancy, we're working on transition supports and will bring necessary services online as soon as possible. To families of individuals in long-term care or admitted as inpatients, we understand the wait is challenging. We'll work diligently to bring them back quickly and safely, although it may take some time due to the complexity and safety considerations involved. Stay informed about the health and social services supports available by visiting the NTHSSA's website, where you can find a full rundown of available services and programs. In closing, I want to express my thanks to everyone who has put in tireless efforts to safeguard our communities and keep our essential services running. Your unwavering commitment has played a significant role in making our return home possible. I'd also like to express my appreciation to those who continue to dedicate their efforts to protecting Fort Smith and Hay River. To the residents of those communities, I want to emphasize that we will keep our lines of support open with our partners in the South while you're away, and we eagerly await your return. I want to express my deep gratitude for everyone's patience, understanding, and resilience during these tough times. I'd now like to ask Mayor Rebecca Alty to make her remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Phase 5 is set to begin on Wednesday, September 6th. I know some folks asked why release it on Friday afternoon. Honestly, in this emergency, there's no weekdays or weekends or stat holidays. Every day is the same. Get up, work, eat, go to sleep, repeat the next day. If we could have finalized the plan earlier in the day, we would have released it earlier. But as we've always said, when more information was available, we were going to share it. It's important to note, on September 6th, residents are coming back in the reverse order of the evacuation. So the general public who require minimal supports will be welcomed back first, and residents who need more healthcare and/or shelter supports would come back when services are ready and available for them. So please, as the Minister just mentioned, if you have special healthcare needs, before returning home, please consult the GNWT's public notice regarding NTHSSA's limited services. When the City and the YKDFN issued the reentry plan with dates yesterday, it was issued with a big caveat: Mother Nature and her unpredictable nature. That caveat will remain until the end, but we didn't want to delay releasing the plan because the plan will always be subject to change if fire forecasts or conditions change, particularly as Highway 1 is key to a safe return. As we've seen throughout this summer and previous summers, the highway will open when it's safe. This can be intermittent, so watch the GNWT's infrastructure website closely and make sure to always drive to the conditions, like when you are evacuating. We'll also release more information over the coming days, but here's a few points to consider as you prepare to return home. If you're driving, be prepared for delays, have some food and water, be aware that there will be limited capacity in Northern Alberta communities for such things like hotel rooms. It's also important to be safe. There will be increased traffic, and as we head into the fall weather, we're getting dawn and dusk earlier, so watch out for animals, particularly bison, on the road. And make sure you have your headlights on at all times, and again, drive to conditions. If you're flying home, the city is getting ready for your arrival and organizing transportation for you to get home or back to Sir John, including taxi vouchers, buses, and ambulances for people with mobility issues. And whether you're flying or driving, remember that you're leaving communities that are fully operational and functional, and you'll be coming back to basic services. As everyone arrives home, it will take time to get back to fully normal. There will be limited healthcare services, not all city facilities will be open, there will be limited cashiers at stores, and more. If possible, try to be prepared to be as resilient as you can for the first 72 hours. What does that mean? If you have a prescription or need medicine, consider bringing enough back so you don't have to head to the pharmacy on your first day back. If you generally pay by cash, consider bringing back some emergency cash. I recognize this isn't financially possible for everyone, and by no means is it required, but for those who can and who use cash frequently, you'll be decreasing the pressure on the banks for the first few days. If you're driving, consider bringing back 72 hours worth of non-perishables. The more people who are able to do this, the less of a rush there will be at the grocery store. Again, these are just a few things to consider. If you can do them, that's great. If not, don't worry about it. There are resources in town and there will be resources available, but these are just a few steps you can take to avoid potential lineups. Finally, as folks may have seen on social media, we have some incredible fire breaks in our community now. The fire breaks that were created were based on the advice of the wildfire experts. They have changed the landscape of our community and in some cases added to our trail network, but their primary and most important purpose was to protect our community this year and for years to come. So brace yourself for change and remember their ultimate purpose. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Alty. And now we are going to get an EMO update from Jay Boast.
Thank you, Aggie, and thank you to all of you for joining us on a Saturday afternoon. I have some important details to share with you about many of the things that you've just heard, but I think it's very important that I start my remarks today by saying thank you to the people of Alberta, Manitoba, and the Yukon for their generosity, hospitality, but most of all, the supports that they have provided to NWT evacuees. From the service provided by the provincial and territorial governments, as well as the emergency management agencies, to nonprofit organizations, all of the hundreds of volunteers, support agencies, and even the individual residents who have shown us such kindness, empathy, and caring since the beginning when NWT residents began to arrive. We have learned so much from you, and we cannot express in words the magnitude of our gratitude. Today, we are here to focus on the re-entry details for the residents of Yellowknife, Dene, and Dene, and the Ingram Trail. And now that we have a target date, it is important that we share those details. Having said that, I want to acknowledge that there are many communities who are still under evacuation orders and who are waiting for the day that they are told that going home is on the horizon. We are still in an emergency, and there is still work to do to get all of our residents, including those from the South Slave, home when it is safe to do so. And so as residents from the North Slave prepare to return home, I do want to remind you that we are still currently under an evacuation order and that it will be downgraded to an evacuation alert, but that, as has been said many times, conditions can change rapidly. So you will need to pay attention to messaging even after you are home. I also want to stress that we all have a role to play during the re-entry phase. It is important to bring your attention to the fact that as of today, the evacuation order has been updated, as the minister mentioned, to ensure that there are no issues for essential workers who need to bring their families home with them can make it home safely. While the NWT, the City of Yellowknife, and the YKDFN are planning and working to make sure everyone knows what to expect for the return home, individual residents also need to start their planning as well. And in doing so, we are asking you to plan to be safe and prepared and not to prioritize being first. Safety and preparedness is what we are asking from you. Today, I have details to share about how best to get home and the associated risks that we want you to consider. Pre-registration for flights was announced earlier and mentioned by the minister. It is now available both online, through the public safety webpage, and over the phone. Pre-registration is the first step for us to develop passenger lists for re-entry flights. And from there, appropriate aircraft will be booked based on the need in establishing flight hubs across Alberta, as well as in Whitehorse and Winnipeg. Pending evacuation orders being lifted, flights will depart as early as Wednesday, September 6th, and continue for an estimated 5 days. We will update that if the need arises when the time comes. We do ask that you please register, though, as soon as possible so we can get a sense of how many flights may be needed and to help determine if there is a need to extend any of the accommodations. Once an evacuee's flight information is available, it will be sent to them at least 24 hours before departure via email or text. They will also receive information on ground transportation from the evacuation or reception centers to the assigned airport. In the case where email or text are unavailable, information will be provided to evacuees over the phone. Evacuees from evacuated South Slave communities are asked to remain where they are rather than to travel to Yellowknife. Given the limited services that have been mentioned in the city as residents return, no supports will be available in the form of evacuation centers or evacuation accommodations. So now let me speak to the current evacuee accommodations. The NWT has arranged for current accommodations to be extended until September 8th for those who need it, and we are currently working on longer-term solutions for after September 8th for anyone who, due to health reasons or special extenuating circumstances, need to stay longer. More details on an extension from September 8th will be shared in the coming days. For those who are traveling by road, the government of Alberta has advised that the Northwest Territories evacuees who start traveling north before the evacuation order is lifted, they want to make it clear that you are responsible for your own accommodations if you leave before the evacuation order is lifted. You will be responsible for accommodations, food, and other expenses. You should also be mindful that there are limited accommodations in High Level and Grand Prairie, given many of our South Slave evacuees are being supported in those locations already. Also, once anyone begins their travel, even after the order is lifted, you are not allowed to re-register at any of the Alberta reception centers. If you arrive at the highway checkpoints before the evacuation order is lifted, you will not be allowed through unless you are on the essential worker list. Once you start your travel by road, once the order has been downgraded to an alert, you need to carefully plan your trip, thinking about your individual needs. You need to ensure your vehicle is ready for the drive home, and to be prepared, you should be bringing basic supplies to last 72 hours just in case. Ensure that you have enough fuel, food, water, and other supplies for the drive ahead. Given the current fire conditions along Highway 1, it may close with short notice, or you may experience long delays. Check highway conditions, know when and where you can buy fuel before you drive, know where rest stops are located, and have a plan for dealing with long delays. Also, please be aware that Betchco will not have services available for gas or food if residents are delayed in the drive up. If you have any medical concerns, we would direct you to the NWT SSSA website for advice and guidance. There is information available there now. So, what should you expect when you are back? While we have been focused on getting essential services staff back home, you can expect that some staff will be coming home at the same time as the general population is. Therefore, in the early days of reentry to Yellowknife, Dene, Delo, and the Ingram Trail, you should expect that only basic services will be available, as has been mentioned already. You can also expect that some of those services will be slower than normal. We will continue to provide details regularly along the way and be your source of truth as services become established to full capacity. So, start making your plan for reentry. Make sure you are prepared and that your plan is flexible for delays, and above all, be safe. We will be with you on this journey, both figuratively and literally, and look forward to welcoming you home. And we thank you for the time spent with us today.
Thank you, Jay. So we're going to move on to the question period now with NWT Media first. And I just ask media, please no repeat questions. We do want to get to as many questions as possible today. All right. Cristiano at Media Tenwa. Do you have a question?
Yes. Bonjour et merci beaucoup. I have a question to Minister Thompson. So, thousands of cars are likely to start driving to northern Alberta in the next few days. What measures have been taken with the city of high level, for example, to manage the situation? What steps are being taken to coordinate the resources and assistance?
Sure. I'm going to throw this one to Jeffrey, actually, with the Department of Infrastructure. Jeffrey?
Okay, so for the reentry, I mean, everybody, as you just heard multiple people say, you need to pre-plan. It's a big, there's quite a few vehicles that are going to be coming back, and there's a lot of planning to get involved. The Alberta government has been involved. There are partners in this, so they are prepared for the travelers coming. But as you heard, they don't have a lot of facilities for accommodations and different things. But we have lots of things on the roads ourselves. We're providing porta potties, for example. There's 15 currently porta potties in various areas around Providence. We will have traffic controllers on the Decho Bridge, which is down to one lane, but we have the controllers on the bridge to ensure smooth and safe flow of traffic. Safety is a big thing. A key point, which is everybody is saying, it's please be patient, please be kind. Your safe return home is a priority. We have tow trucks that will be on the highway with emergency gas only. This is not free gas to get you back, but it's emergency gas. You're pre-planning, and hopefully you have all of the pre-plan in place. But we do have tow trucks. The GNWT highways map is key. Everybody needs to be looking at that. It's up to date, and I'll just give you an example of how up to date that is. At 3 a.m. this morning, I received a phone call from the BC government highways department, and it was about a fire on Highway 7 down through Fort Liard. So we went through. I woke up our comms people at 3 a.m. and at 3:20 that map was updated. So that is key for travelers to come through. We also have planning for when you exit off the bridge for safe travels through, because some cars are going to be coming off, some vehicles will be coming off and needing gas in Fort Providence. Some will not. So we're setting up the flow of traffic so that we don't get delays there. I think I'll leave it at that, and Minister Thompson can continue if you want, or are you just leaving it with me?
Minister Thompson, do you want to add anything to that?
It's just going to be quick. I think Jeffrey described the situation perfectly. We are trying to do it as calmly and as controlled as we can. And again, I think it's about being safe. And being respectful, and also being respectful and understanding the situation. We could still see smoke on these highways, so drive to the conditions. Be respectful for your other passengers or other people on the road. So yeah, it's very much, I think Jeffrey explained the situation perfectly. Thank you. Thanks,
Minister. Cristiano, do you have another question?
Yes, I do. I have another question to Minister Thompson. So with the situation, there are people with money struggles. My question is, when evacuees can expect to receive the financial assistance from the Evacuation Travel Support Program? Will that happen before Wednesday?
Sure. Your question is actually a finance question, so I'm going to throw this to Bill with finance. Bill, go ahead.
Thank you, Aggie. So we have received about 5,000 applications for the two programs. We will expect to get most of that money out in the next, well, hopefully Tuesday and Wednesday. So hopefully most people have that money coming, but I don't know if we'll get it all out before the 6th. But definitely over the course of this week, we should be able to get all those processed. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Alrighty, moving along now to Maxime at Radio Taiga. Oh, sorry, Minister, go ahead.
Yeah, I think I have to commend the Department of Finance. They got staff. This staff is working really hard to get that money out there. I had a constituent from another community talk to us about when the money was going to be done, and we said 7 days, and they said, "Oh, I got it today." So they are working on it. It's first come, first serve. They're getting it out, and I have to commend the Department of Finance. This is a new program for that's being offered, and I kudos to them and their staff for getting this out, because they're all spread over Alberta as well. So I have to say thank you to them.
Thank you, Minister. Alrighty, moving along to Maxime at Radio Taiga. Maxime, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you very much, Agatha. I think my question would be for Mike Westwick. Okay. Correct me if I'm wrong. But since we're going to go down from an evacuation order to an alert, do we have, although it's pretty specific, of course, do we have a probability for the city to issue a new evacuation order while residents will be trying to re-enter?
Well, I can speak from a wildfire perspective, and perhaps Aggie might pass it over to the city to discuss a little bit more. But what I can say is we're feeling very good about where we're at on that fire that was threatening Yellowknife there. We remain in a status of being held. Yesterday, there was a wind event of 55 kilometers or so an hour. We were experiencing in gusts in that area, and that eastern perimeter held, and that was a really important test. So, the fact that there's an alert in place says you should be ready. That's what that direction means. But our team has done some really good work on the ground there to knock down those hot spots and get folks in behind, mopping up, to build a, secure perimeter and protect the capital.
Mayor Alty, do you want to say anything here? Oh, Minister Thompson, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So this is the, evacuation order, then we're downplaying it to alert. So again, it's similar to what we've seen in Hay River and Kadichy First Nation and Betchico and Wequity and Jean Marie. So we went from an order to an alert, and then to having people be prepared as the fire. And I think Mike's talked about the great work that the firefighters, the city firefighters, and the contractors and the military have done. So, and yesterday it was a windy day, but we had some good. It still stayed. So the work that's being done is there. But with Mother Nature, you cannot guarantee anything. Like it could change on a drop of a pin. So, but we feel comfortable that the alert is the stage to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Mayor, do you want to add to this, or should we move on?
No, that's fine. Territorial order, so good.
Perfect. All righty. So, Maxime, do you have another question?
Yes, I have a quick follow-up to that one. Thank you for your answers. Although, of course, it's a catastrophic scenario, this first question that I asked, what would be the logistics behind managing a two-way flow now out of the city in case of an actual evacuation order while residents are trying to re-enter?
Sure. Jeffrey?
I'm not really sure if I understand the question. Are we talking about another evacuation while we're trying to re-enter? I missed the question.
That's right.
Really.
Excuse me. No,
Can you clarify?
maybe I should. Absolutely. I'm trying to imagine a case where while the residents are in the process of re-entering the city, and not everybody has made it yet to the city, so still cars would be lined up on Highway 3. What if an evacuation order is given at this time, obliging some people to get out of the city while some people are lining up to actually trying to re-enter? So what would be the logistics behind trying to have people to turn around and having to evacuate? So, because I guess that having a two-way flow of cars would be problematic.
Yeah, well, I mean, we have highways officers. We have patrolling on the highway at all times currently doing patrols right now. And so if that happens, obviously we stop the flow from entering. So the northbound flow will be stopped immediately. And then we just, they're safe exactly where they are currently. So I'm assuming, I think about the process because it's a bit of an extrapolated, bit of a hypothetical, but we'd stop the northbound flow and then we'd just escalate the southbound flow of traffic. And when we could, we'd just turn around the northbound flow and integrate it in. But it's our highways officers and patrolling officers that are on the roads that would do that.
Thanks, Jeffrey. All right, Kai at NNSL. Oh, Mayor Alty, do you want to add to this?
Yeah, I was just going to say that, come Wednesday, like every day, it's analyzed. The ECC does the review to see the status of the fire. And so if there was a need to, before Wednesday, to change it from an evacuation order down to an evacuation alert, or to keep the evacuation order in due to a forecast of the fire and the weather, that would be taken into consideration. So again, the September 6th comes with the big caveats of weather and fire, and it wouldn't be downgraded to an alert if there was a forecasted change to the fire.
Thanks, Mayor. All right, Kai at NNSL.
All right, so I do actually know that the Fort Providence Big River services that's won't gonna be actually open for.
Sorry, Kai, your audio's out. We can't hear you.
Again for P. Hello.
Yeah, Kai, you're cutting out. Maybe type your
okay.
question in.
Think no.
No, sorry, we can't. Try again.
Oh.
Yeah, maybe try again from the start.
So I heard that the Fort Providence, like the Big River service, is going to be not open for 24 hours. So is there a plan for people who want to actually to fuel the gas?
Okay, Jeffrey at Infrastructure.
Okay, so I mean, it's all part of the planning of coming back into Yellowknife. So the advance notice we have from Big River is that they've lost a lot of key staff because it's university students that have returned to university. So consequently, they're publishing that they're going to be open from 6 a.m. to midnight. So it's a long duration. So they're going to try as well to extend, but again, this is it's a business. There's no guarantees, but travelers need to take that into account when they're traveling north. I guess that 6 a.m. to midnight is the current structured or current published notes for them to be open. They may, if I think the offhand term is if the people working there can stay awake, then it'll extend beyond midnight. But the travelers need to look at the 6 a.m. to midnight as the time.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Kai, do you have another question?
So another question, which is, will there be a special speed limit? Hello?
No, go ahead.
Is there going to be a special speed limit for the re-entry?
Jeffrey?
So we were discussing this today. The normal areas of the highway, we won't. We expect everybody to drive safe and drive to the conditions that they're driving in. But we will be slowing down traffic around the bridge, certainly around the area of any gas stations. We ask people to be cautious and to be wary of other travelers and to be patient. That's a big thing. We have one lane on the bridge, so we have workers there, flags people. We're going to set up some we're planning the flow of traffic for people that want to stop for fuel versus people that want to continue on and don't need the fuel. So it is slow period. We'll probably slow down the traffic, put up some signs around the bridge in those areas. But no, after that, it's no changes to the speed limits that are on the normal part of the highway.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Minister Thompson, do you have anything to add? I saw that you wanted to come on there.
Yeah, just the first question. So if people, Big River, they do have that information on their Facebook page. They're saying, it's 6 to 12. But they also said on their page that, if you arrive between 12 and 6 p.m. Or 6 a.m., people can stay in their parking lot, stay there and get ready to be there. And again, be patient and be kind with everybody. So they're providing a service, and I think Jeffrey described it perfectly, just that they're trying to do it as much as they can, but 6 to 12 right now is their time frame. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. All right, now moving along to Ollie at Cabin Radio. Hi, Ollie.
Hi, Aggie. Thank you. Can you give us as detailed a timeline as currently exists for the resumption of commercial flights?
Sure. I'm going to throw this one to Jamie.
I believe that's a question for infrastructure, Aggie.
Oh, sorry about that. Infrastructure.
Yeah,
Back to you, Jeffrey.
Seems I'm on the hot seat today.
Yeah.
So the first thing that we'll talk about is the airport itself. And currently we're planning repatriation flights. And that's the priority right now, is to get the people that are essential to getting Yellowknife up and ready for the return for phase 5. So that's the current plan. Now that we have clarity on the timing for the essential, now we start planning for the phase 5. So the Department of Infrastructure and Airport Division have been working behind the scenes with all the partners, staff, companies, organizations that's needed to prepare for commercial air travel resumption in the airport. We're working hard to try and line up those commercial operations to coincide with the evacuation order being lifted on Wednesday. But, and I have to emphasize, but in order to do that, there are a lot of challenges that we need to overcome. Airports are highly regulated to ensure safe operations, and the safe part of that is the key. So we're working to establish the commercial operations and anticipate on day one that there will be a commercial operation, but it'll be reduced services such as times of operation, delays. The good news is we are taking steps to move the airport back to a full operation as soon as safely able. But some of those challenges we have, the security screeners and the calibration of the equipment, the air traffic services, the controllers and the flight service people, the security in and around the airport, refuelers, baggage handlers, the list just goes on and on. But we are working with everybody to try and close that gap from Wednesday noon when the order goes down to an alert to when we get back to the full resumption of commercial in Yellowknife Airport.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Ollie, do you have another question?
Yeah, for people driving back, it sounds like there isn't going to be any provision of free gas by the sounds of it. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. There are some people who don't have the money to pay for getting back home and haven't received $750 yet. What are the supports for them? What should they do?
Sure. Bill, can you speak to this one? Bill from Finance?
Sorry, I was just having trouble finding my mute button, but yeah, thanks for the question. So as I said before, the 6th is coming up. We are processing the 5,000 applications we received. We had 40 people that have been redeployed to that task from other areas in the public service. So we're hoping to get through those applications fairly quickly so that we can have payments out to everybody by the end of this week. So hopefully everybody that needs that money will have it. So that's the main form of support that we're providing for people driving home. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Ian at CKLB?
Yes, hi. This first question is for Jay. I just want to be 100% sure because I've seen opposite things reported in different outlets. So the date of September 6th, the return date of September 6th at noon, that also applies to residents of the Ingram Trail?
Go ahead, Jay.
Yes, as the minister mentioned in his comments, we are making sure that it also will be downgraded from an order to an alert for residents of the Ingram Trail as well.
Do you have another question, Ian?
Yes, I also wanted to ask, I was just looking at the highway conditions, and I see that the Fort Liard Highway is still closed. Is that planning to be reopened in time for the September 6th date?
Jeffrey?
Back to me. As I was saying, it was 3 a.m. this morning that the British Columbia Highways Department contacted me. And the fire is in the south of the border, but it's a pretty hot fire. It was raging. It crossed the road in a couple of places. So the anticipation is that's going to be a 2-day closure. So it's obviously these highways, we know how important they are, especially at this time for people getting back to the Yellowknife area. But it has to be done in a safe order. And if the fires are there, then unfortunately we have to keep the highways closed. Safety is paramount.
Thanks, Jeffrey. All right, moving along now to Ethan at My True North Now. Oh, Minister Thompson, go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry. Yeah. And we are making sure that information is available in Fort Nelson and on the turnoff there. As Jeffrey said, at 3:20, they had that information out. And again, people have to be aware that roads can close. This is a new fire that's happened, and it has had an impact on it. And we've been basically telling people, even here, that we're going out, leaving the Northwest Territories to go to Fort Nelson, that the road is closed for at least 24 to 48 hours, and that the Department of Infrastructure is getting that information out as best they can. So I have to give kudos to them. Like they said, 3:20, they had it on the map was done. And this morning before our ferries were out there, that was there, and they had vehicles at the turnoff there blocking people. So it was amazing. Great work on short notice. Thank you.
Thanks, Minister. All right. Oh, Jeffrey, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted, so just how quickly this happened. So last night at about 11 p.m., talking to the British Columbia forestry people, at about 11 p.m., the fire was about 10,000 hectares. 2 hours later, it was 30,000 hectares. So it had tripled in size. So that's how fast these fires grow, and that's why the keeping up to date on the highway when you're traveling, the highways map is your best source for sure.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Okay, Ethan at My True North Now.
Hi, yeah, I think I'll throw this one to the mayor. Do you feel that the city is adequately prepared to welcome people as early as Wednesday when the NWT is suggesting that, people bring food and fuel for an additional 3 days?
Go ahead, Mayor.
Yeah, it's definitely balancing the urgency to get people home with being fully staffed, and so it is important that folks recognize that we are having basic services. We can't wait a whole month to get everything up and running and be perfect. So that's where we're really making sure that residents are clear when you're coming home, that you are prepared. So yes, I think it's important that we continue with the re-entry and that folks recognize that it won't be fully Yellowknife that we had back in June yet.
Jay, do you want to add to this as well?
Yeah, I just wanted to discuss the notion of having 72 hours worth of supplies. That is, if you look across jurisdictions, you will see that the suggestion for being prepared in an emergency environment is to have 72 hours of supplies. That it's not particularly a comment, but it just does make good sense that with services that are going to be less than normal, it makes good sense to be prepared, and we recommend 72 hours worth of preparedness. But I just want to make sure that there was a little bit of a tone there that there is a difference in messaging, and the messaging about being prepared. I think we would all encourage residents to be prepared, and that the best practice is to have 72 hours worth of supplies.
Thanks, Jay. Ethan, do you have another question?
Yeah, so I'm assuming this would go to someone at infrastructure. If Highway 1 closes like mid re-entry, what is the expectation for folks who get stuck on the road because there's no accommodations essentially past like Edmonton?
Jeffrey?
So our plan obviously is to close before any hotspots. So that would be at the border, or currently as it is at Dene. So it's unfortunate, but fire happens really quickly. While I've been on here just in the last 2 minutes, I've just got notified that the fire hotspot came up on Highway 5, which has been closed to public, but we've been getting essential services in through. That just closed. So this is how quickly things change. So we will close the highway. We'll ensure that people that are beyond the barricades, whether it be Dene or the border, we'll ensure that they get through any areas. We have highways people out there and patrolling and escorting. As for the people sitting at the barricade at that point, hopefully it's a short duration. We've only had a couple of long duration closures, excluding last night for the wind event. But we've only had a couple of long duration closures. Typically, they're shorter in duration. But that's why everybody is saying you need to prepare for this. It's just changes so rapidly that anybody that's traveling has to be prepared that the road is going to close and have water and some food and essentials on hand. No expectation is going to be closed for days on end at that time. So we'll be just sit and wait through the timeline until the highways officers and patrollers deem the highway safely again.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Okay, we're going to move along to Juanita at CBC. Do you have a question?
Hi, yeah, thanks for taking my question. I'm just wondering about there was talk of a staggered plan for a return. Is there still a staggered plan so that, people can get back in a timely manner?
Sure. Mayor Alty?
Yeah, thanks. So it is still the 5 phase, and I almost say phase 5, has a bit of an A and B component to it. So phase 3, which is critical service staff, is continuing right now by flights for healthcare. And come Monday and Tuesday, or if the highway's open on Sunday, other critical staff can return by road. Phase 5 is what begins on Wednesday, September 6th. However, with the exclusion of folks with special healthcare concerns, and so making sure that you consult NTHSSA's website for more information on whether you would be in that demographic. So still a 5-stage, with stage 5 actually having an A and B component.
Thank you, Mayor. Jay, your hand is up.
I also think that in terms of talking about a staggered approach, this is where people's individual planning comes into play. You have to decide on your own circumstances whether it is best for you to head home on Wednesday or Thursday or Friday, depending again on your own personal circumstances and what that means for you and the plan. Regardless of when you go, you are going to need to be patient. It is just going to be the reality of this situation with so many people returning. So that's part of what we want you to plan for and be prepared for. But in terms of a staggered approach, people might want to consider that in their own planning about whether they want to be in that first wave or not, considering what that is likely to mean for, the need to be patient.
Thanks, Jay. Juanita, do you have another question? Juanita, do you have another question? No? Okay, I'm going to move along now to Natalie Pressman at CBC NWT.
Thanks. I'm not sure who's best positioned to answer this question, but I'm wondering when it comes to flights, for people who aren't in regional centers, how is the territory going to make sure that they are able to get onto a plane?
Sure. Jamie, can you speak to this?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Natalie. We're working closely with the government of Alberta to determine what the collection points are from which we'll transport the NWT registrants to the evacuation airports. So those haven't been determined yet. We'll determine them after we've analyzed the data that we get from the registration. So just to echo Jay's point there, the sooner that people can get registered, the better we'll be able to determine what those points will be.
Thanks,
Thank
Jamie.
you.
Do you have another question, Natalie?
Yes. We're hearing the minister say that those who are driving back are responsible for their own food, accommodations, and other expenses. And I'm wondering, after the territory told everyone that's able that they should drive out, why, after all those people were encouraged to drive out, are there not supports for those people to come back?
Sure. I'm gonna send this one to Bill, Finance.
Thanks, Aggie. There are supports, although admittedly they probably don't cover all of the expenses that evacuees have undertaken. But we are offering, as I mentioned before, the $750 travel support for people to drive their vehicles back. And as was mentioned by Jamie before, there are flights available for people who can't drive to get on those flights and go back. So I think there are supports, although I take the point that they probably don't cover all of the expenses that evacuees may have incurred. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Juanita, we didn't get to your second question. I'm not sure if you were having audio problems. Do you have a second one?
I do. Yeah, sorry about that. I got disconnected. You mentioned, somebody mentioned that the hotel accommodations between Edmonton and Yellowknife are going to be scarce over the next few days. So how will overnight stops be handled for people who can't make the entire drive from Edmonton to Yellowknife in one day?
Jay, can you speak to this one?
Yeah, I think that also is going to be part of the planning. I think it's one of the things that people are going to have to consider. The other thing that hasn't been mentioned yet is that people who have insurance should be checking with their insurance companies about what their policy is and what their coverage is. That is another avenue for some people. We understand that's not an avenue for everyone, but it is worth mentioning for people that have insurance that they should be having conversations with their insurance provider. In terms of people traveling back, they do have to make plans based on the conditions, and that it includes, weather and fire and distance and all of those things. It is, we've said it many times, it is going to be a challenge, but that's why it requires good planning along the way.
Thanks, Jay. All right, we're going to move along now to Brett at Edge North. Brett, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you. This question's for Mayor Alty. I'm interested in establishing a timeline for the recent announcements. I can see that the city's reentry announcement document was created about 5:03 p.m., and then the GNWT responded at about 6:15 to 6:30. When did the city let the GNWT know about this announcement and the reentry date?
Go ahead, Mayor.
Yeah, thanks, Brett. So the city, the GNWT, and the Yellowknives Dene First Nation are all working on our re-entry plan together. So we do have a planning task force. So we've been continuing to work over the past 2 weeks on our plans together.
Do you have another question, Brett?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Just a quick one. According to the city's emergency management plan, what emergency level is the city currently in right now?
Mayor Alty?
I don't have the emergency plan at my fingertips, but right now the city of Yellowknife is currently under a territorial evacuation order, and then the territory is currently under a territorial territorial state of emergency. So when a territorial state of emergency is under play, the territorial government is has extra powers and authority, which is why they were renewed their territorial state of emergency last Wednesday. And I'll, Ms. Bassi-Kellett, if you'd like to add a bit more.
Thanks very much, and it's a great question. So we've been working hand in hand with MACA, and we have been seeking to understand, because of course, when we put our state of local emergency in place, it became null and void once the territorial state of emergency went into effect, and that's as per the Emergency Management Act. But in our discussions with MACA, they did confirm to us shortly after the evacuation that all aspects of an emergency, from planning to doing the emergency response, these are the responsibility of the local authority, the local government, and that's clear in the legislation. So we said, okay, we really appreciated all the support that MACA has provided to us. We've worked very closely with them and with the rest of the GNWT, but certainly in planning for the reentry, they again made it clear that with advice from ECC and with their support that the timeline. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, is there any other Northern media on the call that I'm missing here? Any NWT media that I'm missing here? Sure, Quinn, go ahead.
Hey there. Originally, the EDIS program was only available if you received no income while evacuated. The guidelines have been updated to include anyone that had reduced income. Given that the application for this and the travel benefit are the same form, how would someone apply for the support if they've already applied for travel support?
Sure. Bill, go ahead.
Thank you, Aggie. So we, I don't know if the website's been updated, but we have allowed now people to apply for either program separately. So you can apply with that updated, with the updated criteria. You can apply for either program together or separately, depending on what your needs are. So you can apply just for the income assistance if that's all you qualify for. So that's available now. Thank you.
Quinn, do you have another question?
I don't. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any other NWT media on the line that we haven't covered yet? Okie dokie. I am going to open it up now to Southern media. If you guys can just raise your hands if you have any questions. Okay, Cece, go ahead.
Hi there. My first question is, when do you expect other communities to be able to return? I know we're focusing on 3 today, but I was wondering if there's a timeline for other NWT communities.
Sure. Jay, go ahead. Oh, Minister Thompson, you want to get in here?
Yeah, first and foremost, when it's safe. We've been working with our regional superintendents are working with the communities. We're taking the advice of ECC with the situation. Hay River, Fort Smith, and Kikisa and Kaddichi right now are in very difficult situations. So once we've been able to get it safe for them people to come in and we have those conversations, we will have people in. I can tell you right now, staff have been in communication, whether it's with leadership or with administration. So they're starting to talk about that very thing. They want to get in as soon as they can, but maybe Jay can add a little further detail. Thank you.
Thanks, Minister. Jay?
I think the minister covered it very well. I think that for the other communities that we're talking about, given the current conditions, it is premature to talk about timelines for when they are coming home. There is still a threat to those communities. They are still under evacuation orders, and we are very much grateful to the firefighters who are continuing to fight those fires very hard every day, and I think it is a disservice to them to jump ahead of the work that they're doing right now. We are thankful for their work, and there is, I mentioned it at the top, there is still very much an emergency happening and being responded to in the Northwest Territories.
Thanks, Jay. Sarah, do you have a question? Radio Canada? Sarah at Radio Canada, your hand is up. Okay. Ollie Williams, do you have a question?
Yeah, thank you very much. To get into some of the operational stuff here, people are wondering for the flights back. Lots of people flew out with carry-on, but are now coming back weeks later with a whole whack more than that. What's the baggage situation going to be for people who now have more things than they left with? And what's the pet situation going to be for getting them back?
Jamie, go ahead.
Hi, Ollie. Yeah, thanks for the question. We recognize that when people went out, they just had the very few things often in their backpack. The baggage allowance on the way back is going to be two 50-pound bags, but with no oversized baggage. And we just have to do that to make sure we're managing the flights appropriately. As for pets, there's going to be exceptions in play there as well. Well, it's preferred that people have their pets in carriers. If that's just not possible, having your pet on a leash or in your arms is also acceptable. So there's some allowances being made to make sure that the flights are comfortable on the way back.
Thanks, Jamie. All right, Juanita?
Hi, thank you. Will High Level and Big River have enough fuel for the large potential volume of vehicles over the first couple of days once the evacuation order is lifted?
Jeffrey?
So yes, so for High Level, the Alberta government has certainly been a partner in this, and they're aware of all the traffic that's going to be coming back. 7,000 plus vehicles probably traveling back through. So they're our partners, and they've been working with us hand in hand. So they are prepared for us. And same thing at the Big River. We have pretty much double the capacity there right now of what they had on hand during the evacuation. We've been measuring what was used during the evacuation as well. So yes, there's no concerns of fuel. We will have, they've ordered extra tankers to be on hand as well. And I mean, you talk about Big River, and I'll go back to a question I had earlier about the fuel as well. So everything was about Big River, but there's other fuel stations, and Big River doesn't have diesel. So Northern doesn't have diesel. So Big River is a choice for diesel, but also for the gas when Big River is closed. There's a Snowshoe has a card lock. Snowshoe Inn has a card lock as well, a Petro-Canada Petro Pass card lock. So yeah, there's no concerns. We've been on top of the fuel situation, talking with all of the fuel service providers, and no concerns for the reentry.
Thanks, Jeffrey. I'm just going to take it to the chat here. Sarah from Radio Canada, her audio wasn't working, but she's asked her question here. So this one's for Mayor Alty. Would you mind to repeat in French what residents should expect to find when they will be back home? Go ahead, Mayor.
Oui, merci beaucoup. Quand les gens retournent à Yellowknife, il va avoir des services qui sont minimums. Donc, l'hôpital va avoir moins de services, et donc les gens qui ont des problèmes de santé, c'est certain qu'il faut regarder le site du gouvernement avant de retourner. Il va avoir aussi moins de services dans la ville, comme les centres de récréation ne seront pas ouverts. Il y aura moins de gens qui travaillent au magasin. Donc, on encourage les gens d'apporter les choses à la maison quand ils retournent à Yellowknife pour 72 heures. Donc, assez de nourriture, s'ils ont besoin d'argent, comme du cash, s'ils ont des médicaments. C'est un peu comme quand les gens ont parti de Yellowknife, apportent les mêmes choses pour retourner à la ville, parce que pour les premières 72 heures, il va avoir peut-être des lignes dans des magasins, et bien sûr avec l'hôpital, il faut que tu regardes que les services que vous avez besoin sont là pour vous. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, Natalie at CBC North.
Thanks. I'm wondering if people drove out but don't have a ride back, are those people eligible to catch a flight home?
Jamie?
Yeah, thanks for that question. We recognize that in some cases people hitched a ride out with friends or ended up in a different place than they intended. And yes, they are eligible to register for a return flight. Thanks.
Thanks, Jamie. Ollie, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Sorry, just clicking between a whole bunch of tabs. Can I please ask, is there any sense about checkpoints? Like we know there are checkpoints on the roads right now. How many road checkpoints will there be and where over the next 4 days? And when will each of those checkpoints open to allow the general public home? Do they all open at the same time, noon on Wednesday, or is that staggered?
Okay, Jeffrey, go ahead.
Okay, so there's actually only one checkpoint for the re-entry portion of it. The other checkpoints that right now it's currently at Steen River. It moves to the border and it moves based on fire. So those checkpoints south are for the safety of the highway and being open or closed. So the one checkpoint that we currently have, and we've had since for quite a while, is at kilometer 272, and that's for entry into Yellowknife. So currently, even for Monday and Tuesday, that checkpoint will remain in place. We're asking people not to travel north unless you're been notified that you're essential and you're required, because you're going to get to that checkpoint on Monday or Tuesday, and if your name is not on that list as an essential identified worker for Yellowknife, whether it be the city or contractors or NWT, you're going to be stopped. We're asking that you do not proceed unless you have actually been notified. On Wednesday at noon, when the evacuation order gets dropped and down to an alert phase, that barricade will come down, and the only barricades that will be on the highway then are just totally for the fire and the safety of the highway itself.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Juanita, do you have a question?
I do, thank you. I'm just wondering about the fiber lines along the highway. Are they currently still at risk between Yellowknife and Alberta with, the current and the forecast fire activity?
Sure. Imran, can I throw this one to you? Imran? Sorry, maybe we'll get back to your question because Imran is on our panel, but he might be having technical difficulties right now. Okay, we'll get back to your question, okay? All right, Cece, do you have a question?
Yes, I was wondering, maybe this question might be for John McDonald, but I was wondering, as Yellowknife schools are set to reopen in September 14th, I was wondering what will happen with schools from other communities, if there's been any conversation, or for parents that might be wondering what the school situation will be like for them.
Sure. John, go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for the question. It's important we don't forget the other communities. EC continues to work with, for example, the South Slave Divisional Education Council and the CSFTNO in the case of Hay River. So really, any decisions around reopening of schools for those areas will depend on the emergency situation in those communities. So I imagine similar to Yellowknife, if the situation warrants and it becomes safe, those education bodies will make decisions about when they'll be able to resume operations. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Kai, your hand is up.
Yes. So I'm wondering if there's any pilot cars going to be in place during return.
Sorry, can you repeat your question?
I mean, is there going to be any pilot cars going to be in place during return?
Jeffrey, can you speak to that?
Yeah, that's for us. So we do have highways officers and patrollers on the highways currently, but and if needed, we will be piloting or escorting traffic through some smoky areas type thing, for example. But that's been the current practice for the past couple of weeks. And so yes, the question is, yes, we will have piloting available if needed.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Okay, I'm going to bring it to the chat now. What is the plan for the return of the more vulnerable population, such as people experiencing homelessness? When should we expect the shelter to be ready? I am going to throw this question to Robert.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Right now, when we're working on the repatriation of all evacuees in Alberta, we work with our Alberta colleagues. It's the same for this particular population. There are of course, some challenges with the group. They have complex needs, sometimes communicating. Not all of them have phones. Some of them have left hotels and integrated into the host communities. So we know, for instance, in Calgary, I can give you an example of how we work with the provincial colleagues. We worked closely with the Alberta Emergency Management Agency. We've contacted and worked with Calgary Emergency Management Agency through the AEMA. We've connected folks on the ground. We have people on the ground in Calgary right now working with SEMA. SEMA is an agency with the City of Calgary. The City of Calgary has very close relationships with their NGO sector, particularly that sector that provides shelter services. They've been monitoring and tracking NWT evacuees that have been accessing their services. They're aware of what's happening on the ground. We're connecting with them through SEMA. SEMA's talked with those folks as well. There are conversations about those shelters preparing to support our folks who are accessing their services, to ensure that they're aware that we're out there and we're prepared to help them to get registered, prepared to help them to get to airports, prepared to ensure that if they wish, they can return to the Northwest Territories.
Thank you, Robert. And this actually leads into the next question that we have here in the chat. And this is CBC Calgary. You sent out, so this one's for Mayor Alty. You sent out a joint statement yesterday with Mayor Gondek in Calgary calling on Alberta and NWT governments to support trauma and crisis management. Can you elaborate, Mayor, on what kind of social services would help in Calgary and Alberta? Is this for people living in vulnerable populations such as unhoused people?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So I did get a call from the mayor of Calgary yesterday. She was expressing concerns, and yes, it was for the vulnerable population, those who are unhoused from Yellowknife, who are now in the city of Calgary. The city of Calgary's not-for-profit sector is pretty stretched when it comes to just providing support to their own vulnerable population. And so her request was that there needs to be more supports, from whether it's the government of Alberta, the government of the Northwest Territories, or whether those two governments need to reach out to the federal government, or through the mutual aid agreement that is established during emergencies to get extra supports from the other provinces, recognizing that many of the staff from the territorial government are displaced as well. So if there's need for more, that Alberta or the Northwest Territories can provide, but really needing more supports when it comes to trauma and crisis management. That was the request, recognizing that as we are looking to have residents come back Wednesday, it doesn't mean that all residents will make it back Wednesday. And so really looking for those extra supports for the next week or plus. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Mayor. Kimberly, do you want to add to this?
Yeah, thanks. The previous question referenced, it was an inquiry about when shelter services would be reestablished in Yellowknife. So I thought it would be helpful to perhaps add that certainly shelter services were identified as one of our priorities for early reestablishment, just because we think it's really important to make sure that those core services that people depend on are available if in fact anybody returns in that first wave after reopening who need sheltering. So as of Wednesday, on the date of reentry, we'll be planning to have dinner available in one of our shelter sites, as well as overnight sheltering. Through the weekend, we're going to have meals and washroom facility access established as a minimum, as well as overnight sheltering available to folks who might need it. And as our staff return to the city and are able to increase, we're going to try to get it up to fulsome operations as soon as possible. But we certainly realize how important it is to have those minimum services available to returning evacuees.
Thanks very much, Kimberly. All right, moving along now to Cristiano. Cristiano, do you have a question?
I do. Merci beaucoup, Agatha. Well, we've been talking a lot about Yellowknife, and I feel like we also need to talk about the South Slave evacuees. And my question is, are there any anticipated modifications to the service offered to the South Slave evacuees in Alberta?
Jay, do you want to take this on?
Absolutely. In terms of altering the service, I think that what we know is that until Wednesday, we are going to be at our current levels. So part of what will happen in the next few days is an assessment of, as folks are leaving back to Yellowknife, what does that mean for those who are left, and how do we provide the services that have been provided continuing? So one of the first things we've done is extended the stays until at least September 8th, and we are using that time to assess what other supports need to be in place, and what changes, if any, need to be put in place. So we absolutely recognize that the support here in Alberta is not over. It will shift and it will change, but we are already working on those plans. And one of the first things we did was to extend the hotel stays to the 8th to buy us time to assess what the next steps are after that, and we expect more details to come.
Thanks, Jay. All right, Juanita, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I'm wondering if the government of the Northwest Territories has toured the devastated hamlet of Enterprise. If yes, what are your thoughts to that? And if no, are you planning on touring Enterprise anytime soon?
Minister Thompson, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I've reached out to the mayor of Enterprise. We're talking about going in on Tuesday to see the impact on it. I will be having conversations with leadership in Fort Smith and Hay River tonight to just talk about what our plans are. Again, it's about making sure it's safe to go in and to be respectful of the community. So the community of Enterprise has invited us in. And like I said, I've had conversations with the mayor, and on Monday we'll be finalizing our approach on how we do it. Thank you.
Okay, Juanita, I see that you raised your hand again. Do you have a follow-up to that specific question?
Not to that specific question. I have another question.
Sure. Then I'll just go through the order and I'll get back to you. Ollie, your hand is up.
Yeah, thanks. Regarding medical travel, there are people who have medical travel from the NWT or from Yellowknife down to Alberta booked soon. Do they just stay in Alberta up to a certain date of that? Do they come back, then get flown back down? What's the plan?
Kimberly, can I throw this one to you?
Yes, thanks. So there have been some temporary amendments made to the medical travel policy, recognizing that there are extraordinary circumstances related to this evacuation, with many folks who've been outside of the NWT for a prolonged period of time and would have had to sought medical services for a variety of reasons in the locations that they're at. So while I can't give, a blanket answer, because certainly every medical travel situation is pretty nuanced and individuals, we are prepared to support some degree of medical travel that has to happen within other jurisdictions, not necessarily originating in the NWT, which is one of the requirements of the policy under normal circumstances. We certainly encourage folks to reach out to their employers, anybody who has employer medical travel benefits, because those policies might be very different, but anybody who's under the NWT medical travel policy should be working with their primary care providers, and we've provided information on our website for how to actually contact those folks, particularly in Yellowknife where services are closed right now. But we do have contact information for people who have new medical travel and need to navigate that system. And for folks that had pre-existing medical travel booked, they should be reaching out to our medical travel contact information to work with them directly on those arrangements.
Thanks, Kimberly. Okay, Natalie, go ahead.
I'm wondering, once people land in Yellowknife, what's the plan to get them to their actual houses? Will there be shuttles, for example?
City of Yellowknife, Mayor Alty, can you speak to this one?
Yes, we are organizing transportation, but I'll let Sheila explain the details.
Sure. Sheila, go ahead.
Terrific. Thank you so much. It's a great question. We're really looking forward to being able to welcome everybody home. So we know that NWT is doing the heavy lifting with getting everyone from evacuation centers back to Yellowknife. And so the role of the city is to make sure that there are services on the ground to welcome everyone home when they get here. So when evacuees are on the flights that are coming in, our plans will be that we're going to be able to provide them with information on the flight. We know they're being hit with a lot of information at this time, so we want to wait until they're on the plane and about to arrive back home before we lay out what they can expect when they arrive here. So when they get on the ground, we want to get everybody through the airport ASAP because everyone's going to be very keen to go home. We're going to have lots of ground transportation. We're going to have the ability of taking people either directly to their homes. We're going to look at either taking people to Sir John to pick up their vehicles. There will be bus service to certain places like Dene, and I know Kieran will speak to that. We've got a combination of taxi vouchers. We're looking at rides home, where you've got St. John's Ambulance to provide support for people that may have mobility issues. So we're really, really looking forward to welcoming everyone home, getting them home into their homes as quickly as possible. I think that's what everyone's very much looking forward to. Thanks.
Thanks, Sheila. Kieran, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, so we will be providing a bus service from the airport to Dene and Delo, and anywhere else members need to go if they reside in the city of Yellowknife. We'll also be operating an information desk at the Yellowknife airport, so our members can come there and get a little welcome home package that will give them the information they need to settle in, and also provide some key supports that they might need in the first kind of 48 hours. So that's our plan, and we're looking forward again to seeing our members very soon.
Thank you. Sheila,
Thanks.
your hands up.
Just forgot one thing to say. We appreciate that Tlicho government has reached out to us and wants to participate as well in welcoming home their citizens. Thanks.
Thanks, Sheila. Juanita, go ahead. And just so you guys know, we're just going to go through two more reporters, Juanita and Ollie, and then I'll close up. Go ahead, Juanita.
Okay, thank you. So when I was chatting with Fort Providence Mayor Danny Bolio a couple of weeks ago, he mentioned that he hired folks from his community to help manage traffic when the convoy of vehicles went through Fort Providence. And he also mentioned that his community has really stepped up in helping the evacuees in Fort Providence. I'm wondering if the government of the Northwest Territories is looking at any supports, financial supports for the community of Fort Providence to help offset these costs that they've been incurring over the last few weeks.
Minister Thompson, go ahead.
Yeah, so we've reached out. I've had the conversation with Mayor Bolio. We do have a hosting grant that they apply for, and we're able to help them out there. So, and our regional staff are working with them to get that information, help the application filled out. But the same as Fort Res, who's done the same thing. So they opened up their homes and their communities. So we have this hosting grant, and we're working with them on that. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Minister. All right, Ollie, last question. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just returning to commercial flights, I know it sounded like that's a fluid situation. Is there a date we can give people for the earliest date they can book a commercial flight to Yellowknife with reasonable confidence that that flight will go ahead?
Okay, Jeffrey?
Of course. Thanks for the question, Ollie. It is a very fluid situation. As I mentioned, you know, all of the caveats to open an airport, to get it back to within the legal, I'll say the legal side, to follow all of that, it takes a lot. And the screening equipment. So just for example, I mean, if the commercial flight is going to coming in is one thing, but for flights to leave, the passengers need to be screened, and that screening equipment and calibration is going to be like 3 days. We're reaching out the security screeners, the air traffic services, the refuelers. None of those people are our employees. They're not GNWT employees. So we are reaching out. We are working hand in hand with them, and we're hoping to get some of them back in, like I said, to start somewhat of a limited commercial airport open again on Wednesday. it's really hard. I don't expect it to be long. We originally looked at Sunday the 10th, but I think we can close that gap. But there are no guarantees. There are a lot of moving parts. It's an ever-changing mosaic, and a lot of pieces need to come together in order to get to that final date. More to follow as days progress, and the plan. You know, when we get in contact with the companies and they get in contact with their employees, it'll come together. So over the next couple of days, the plan should become more solidified. Sorry, I can't answer with a date that you're looking for, but it is fluid and so many moving parts to get there.
Thanks, Jeffrey. All right, I just remembered we also had a question on fiber lines. I forget which reporter asked that. And we tried to get Imran to respond, but I think Imran may have been experiencing some technical difficulties. Is there a reporter the reporter who asked that question? Can you raise your hand? Oh, so Imran's here now to answer it. Juanita, do you want to ask that question again?
Yes, thank you. Are the fiber lines, the ones that are currently still at risk between Yellowknife and Alberta, are those fiber lines at risk still between Edmonton and Yellowknife?
Go ahead, Imran.
Thank you. I apologize for the technical difficulties. The situation on the ground is quite fluid. The reality is we have services up and they've been stable for a while. We're closely monitoring the situation on the ground with NWT fire. So at this moment, services up are stable between Yellowknife and Alberta. But as you've heard, a lot depends on weather, temperature, and what have you. So for now, I would say that yes, services are back up, stable, but anything can happen. We're closely monitoring the situation together with EMO and Northwest Territory Fire, NWT Fire. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Imran. All right, so thank you to our panel and to media for all your questions today. Thank you for everyone watching, for attending this afternoon. So we are planning to have another press conference on Monday at 4 p.m., recognizing that it is a holiday, but the work doesn't stop. So a media advisory will go out on Monday morning. And media, if you have any further questions until then, of course, reach out to the appropriate department. And if you have a question for the minister, for the premier or ministers, please reach out to press secretary at pressecretary@gov.nt.ca. Thank you and take care.